Hey Internet, it's your old friend Dominic here with the All-American Casino Guide, a channel dedicated to providing you with all the tips, tricks, tutorials, and sometimes trivia about casinos and casino games. And so today we're going to be delving a little bit into the practice of card counting and specifically going a little bit beyond the basics. We've already covered those basics in the high-low system video we did in the past, which kind of is the foundational principles of card counting. So I highly recommend, if you haven't watched that video yet, that you go ahead and pause this one, open a new tab, and go ahead and watch it right now. I'll wait. Okay, now that you're back, the truth is that the high-low method is simply just the tip of the spear. There is a whole lot of other information that goes into our understanding of high-low and how to effectively use it to bring in more money every single time. So if you're serious about your card counting and you want to take it to the next level, you're going to have to learn to use these advanced methods and include them in your regular blackjack playing strategy. The first thing I want to talk about is the idea of deviations. With the running count, you essentially are adjusting the count by +1, +0, or -1, depending on what particular card is dealt. But the running count is just part of the equation. The true count is honestly the only real count that matters, because you're going to be taking the running count, using that to determine the actual true count based on the number of decks that you're playing with at that particular table. So when it comes to betting deviations, it sounds a little bit obvious, but people often forget about these things in the heat of the moment with all those distractions inside the casino. It's very important that using the knowledge of the true count, you modify your wager accordingly. So in situations where it's negative, you should modify your wager dramatically downwards, while in situations where the true count is heavily in your favor, like a +7 or +12 situation, you definitely want to bet a little bit heavier. This is all about winning more money over time and minimizing your losses in the long run. With that, you also need to be smart about your strategy deviations. Utilizing the true count and the running count, you need to be mindful of what's left in the deck. Now, in situations where you have 12 showing and you know that the count is very high, this would be a good time to probably stand on your 12, because the deck is literally stacked with high value cards, 10s and 11s, and you certainly don't want to have those dealt to you by accident. Again, counting cards is a lot about minimizing your losses and maximizing your wins. So in situations like that, you only want to take a hit on a 12 if the count just happens to be in the deep negatives and you know that the deck is stacked with lots of low value cards, which are going to improve your hand and not put you in that bust territory. The next idea I'd like to talk about is the idea of deck penetration. That's deck with an E, by the way. So this is an important factor to consider, because what you're going to have is you're going to typically have about 6 decks that form the shoe. The dealer is typically going to put a yellow or a red cut card somewhere in that stack when they load them into the shoe. Some casinos might even allow the players themselves to place the cut card, but don't count on it. Essentially though, the reason you want to make a mental note of where that cut card is you want to try to figure out how many decks you actually need to use in your calculations to figure out the true count from the running count. So for example, this stack right here is 2 52 card decks, to give you an idea of how big 2 decks are. So if you saw 6 decks would be something like this. So if you saw the cut card around this height, you would know you're actually only dealing with 4 decks and not 6. It's also very important to note that once the dealer has reached this cut card, that means that you need to reset your count altogether. You cannot continue on your count after this, because they're going to be shuffling all the cards again and giving you a brand new shoe. So your count is completely useless at this point. It's also worth noting that if the casino happens to be cutting more than 2 decks out of their shoe, it's probably not the most advantageous strategy to use card counting. Mathematically speaking, you're just not really at an edge anymore. The next thing I'd like to talk about with respect to card counting is the idea of of betting. And I'm not specifically talking about your initial wager, your decision to double down, or your decision to split a hand. I'm moreover talking about insurance and side bets. Now, anybody who watches this channel knows I'm not a big fan of insurance because you're essentially betting on losing. And I don't like to live in a negative world like that. But if you are a great card counter, you can use your skills to increase your chances of winning with insurance. Now, insurance is not offered by every single casino you'll ever encounter, but if you do find a casino that offers it, what it is whenever a dealer is dealt an ace, you are essentially offered a bet against the odds of a blackjack. If you know for a fact that the count is very high and that there is a high probability that the dealer was dealt a 10 to go with that ace, then buying insurance is a pretty smart decision. Inversely, if you know that the deck is stacked with low value cards because the true count is a really low number, then you know the odds of the dealer having a blackjack are relatively low, and decision to not buy insurance is equally good. That is where card counting kind of comes into play with respect to insurance. When it comes to side bets, card counting cannot really be used effectively to predict the outcome of one of those events happening. This is when you place a bet on the pretext of having a three of a kind or a straight or a possible flush. The problem is that the high-low method that is pretty much the cornerstone of card counting doesn't really give any consideration to the suit or specific value of any particular card dealt. Overall, a card is just assigned an arbitrary +1, -1, or +0 value. So it becomes really hard to predict that you're going to be getting three of a kind or a straight or a flush. Now, it is worth noting that in certain situations, having a good true count and knowing that the deck is full of face cards could increase your chances of predicting a three of a kind in that particular situation. Because if you know the deck, for example, is just full of queens, then maybe betting on your odds of getting a three of a kind is possible. The last advanced card counting technique I want to talk about is the idea of back counting, sometimes referred to as Wonging, as the practice has been attributed to a particular gambler by the name of Stanford Wong. This technique consists essentially of watching a game and counting the cards without placing a wager. You wait until the true count is truly in your favor and you Wong in. You essentially jump into the game and place a large bet because the odds of winning are that much in your favor. The advantage to this, of course, is that you are going to lose less money because you're going to be playing less hands and only playing those hands that are to your benefit. As a negative though, Wonging in and Wonging out at the hands and constantly staring at the flow of cards is going to be kind of a indication that you're card counting, and the casinos themselves are pretty much on the lookout for people who are trying to use this tactic. Another thing is that the card counters that are already playing at the table are not going to really appreciate you jumping in and messing with the flow of cards. This is not necessarily a better card counting strategy. It simply is something different you might want to try in the process of developing your card counting. So it doesn't really hurt to give this one a try. So that concludes our rundown of the advanced card counting strategies that you could be using in the game of Blackjack. What'd you guys think? Are there any strategies that we forgot to mention? Make sure to leave them as a comment down below. And while you're at it, clickety-clack that like button, ring-a-ding-ding that notification bell, and pump that big red subscribe button, because we love it when you do. My name is Dominic. This is the All-American Casino Guide, wishing you luck and reminding you as always, play responsibly.